previously, I covered how, based on Trump's potential cabinet and what they were saying, that he would go after DEI in the private sector. And that PlayStation and Xbox, who are heavily involved in DEI practices, would be doomed. Now, lo and behold, Trump is formally going after DEI in the private sector. This is an executive order which also came with another executive order ending DEI in the federal government. This one targets DEI partially in the federal government, but also the private sector, and even orders the government to begin going after the worst offenders. And because PlayStation and Xbox both are extremely large companies in the video game sector, they will be the ones targeted. Let's go over this. Ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. Signed on January 21st, 2025. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1. Purpose. Long-standing federal civil rights laws protect individual Americans from discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. These civil rights protections serve as the bedrock supporting equality of opportunity for all Americans. As President, I have a solemn duty to ensure that these laws are enforced for the benefit of all Americans. Yet today, roughly 60 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, critical and influential institutions of the American society, including the federal government, major corporations, financial institutions, BlackRock, Vanguard, the medical industry, large commercial airlines, law enforcement agencies, and institutions of higher education have adopted and actively used dangerous, demeaning, and immoral race and sex-based preferences under the guise of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, DEIA, that can violate the civil rights laws of this nation. Also note BRIDGE, and I think there's like one or two other acronyms they're using for this, but it's all the same illegal stuff. See, a lot of people said that they're just going to switch what it's called, and that was their original plan until the Supreme Court straight up ruled you don't need to show damages, making all the laws against this stuff enforceable in civil court. So they all can be sued now. Illegal DEI and DEIA policies not only violate the text and spirit of our long-standing federal civil rights laws, they also undermine our national unity as they deny, discredit, and undermine the traditional American values of hard work, excellence, and individual achievement in favor of an unlawful, corrosive, and pernicious, identity-based spoils system. Hardworking Americans who deserve a shot at the American dream should not be stigmatized, demeaned, or shut out of opportunities because of their race or sex. These illegal DEI and DEIA policies also threaten the safety of American men, women, and children across the nation by by diminishing the importance of individual merit, aptitude, hard work, and determination when selecting people for jobs and services in key sectors of the American society, including all levels of government, the medical and aviation, and law enforcement communities. Yet in case after tragic case, the American people have witnessed firsthand the disastrous consequences of illegal, pernicious discrimination that has prioritized how people were born instead of what they were capable of doing. The federal government is charged with enforcing our civil rights laws. The purpose of this order is to ensure that it does so by ending illegal preferences and discrimination. Section 2. Policy. It is the policy of the United States to protect the civil rights of all Americans and to promote individual initiative, excellence, and hard work. I thereby order all executive departments, agencies, to terminate all discriminatory legal preferences, mandates, policies, programs, activities, guidance, regulations, enforcement actions, consent orders, and requirements. I further order all agencies to enforce our long-standing civil rights laws and to combat illegal private sector DEI preferences, mandates, policies, programs, and activities. So here we see they're going after it in the federal government, and here we see that they're going after it in the private sector. Section 3 is just a list of a bunch of executive orders that were terminated. cited around this stuff. It's not really relevant to what we're covering here today, but this will be linked down in the description, so if you want to go through and read all this here, you can do so yourself. Section 4. Encouraging the private sector to end illegal DEI discrimination and preferences. A. The heads of all agencies, with the assistance of the Attorney General, shall take all appropriate action with respect to the operations of their agencies to advance in the private sector the policy of individual initiative, excellence, and hard work identified in Section 2 of this order. B. To further inform and advise me so that my administration may formulate appropriate and effective civil rights policy. The Attorney General, within 120 days of this order, in consultation with heads of relevant agencies and in coordination with the Director of OMB, shall submit a report to the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy containing recommendations for enforcing federal civil rights laws and taking other appropriate measures to encourage the private sector to end illegal discrimination and preference, including DEI. The report shall contain a proposed strategic enforcement plan identifying 1. Key sectors of concern within each agency's jurisdiction. 2. The most egregious and discriminatory DEI practitioners in each section of concern. This refers to Microsoft and Sony, as they are the largest corporations in the gaming sector, and they are both engaging in these practices. Thus, they will likely be targeted by this order. Oh, I would love to be a fly on the wall listening to their executives freak out about this. 3. A plan of specific steps or measures to deter DEI programs or principles, whether specifically denominated DEI or otherwise. See what I tell you? It doesn't matter if they change the name, they're going after the action and behaviors, not the name itself, that constitute illegal discrimination or preferences. As a part of this plan, each agency shall identify up to 9 potential civil compliance investigations of publicly traded corporations, large nonprofit corporations or associations, foundations with assets of $500 million or more, state and local bar and medical associations, and institutions of higher education with endowments over $1 billion. Publicly traded corporations. 4. Other strategies to encourage the private sector to end illegal DEI discrimination and preferences and comply with all federal civil rights laws. 5. Litigation that would be potentially appropriate for federal lawsuits, intervention, or statements of interest. And 6. Potential regulatory action and sub-regulatory guidance. The federal government is gearing up to go after the worst discriminators in various industries. And who has pushed DEI and ESG more so than Sony and Microsoft? Now, fortunately for Nintendo, because some of you guys are probably wondering, well, what about Nintendo? They have kept their DEI practices relatively in check. Like, it's going to be way easier for them to just end what they're doing and escape consequences for their actions other than civil lawsuits for their discrimination in hiring than it's going to be for Sony and Xbox, who have both been reported to engage in this at all levels to insane degrees. And the rest of this is irrelevant to what we're talking about. And as you can see here again, January 21st, 2025 is when it was signed. And we hop over here to Fandom Pulse. Now, originally I was going to use this article, I'll link it in the description, to cover this, but then I decided to go to the executive order itself, as it probably had a bit more juicier details, and I was not disappointed. But we get down to here. Tech executives are telling me that Silicon Valley companies will respect President Trump's ban on discriminatory DEI. Many feel relieved that they don't have to pretend anymore. Resistance here is basically dead. Gladly, they're not going to escape the actions they have already done, but it is good news to hear that they are just throwing in the towel and are all willing to just abolish this nonsense. As I covered before, Trump's going after DEI. This isn't a de facto victory because, remember, Trump only has the power to go after DEI in America. This stuff can still be pushed in Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. But with America being one of the largest markets, this will significantly put a dent in it. And also remember, he said financial institutions, BlackRock and Vanguard, who push this stuff around most of the world, will be stopped from doing this. Unfortunately, you still have the CCP pushing ESG, DEI. You'll still have the Saudi royal family pushing it. You will still have other financial institutions in Europe pushing it. This stuff is not going to go away anytime soon. You also have the World Economic Forum. Very important to mention them pushing this stuff. But Klaus Schwab has stepped down as head. I think he really sees the writing on the wall to the end of his regime. But his family is still firmly in control of the World Economic Forum. And I'll remind you all, Klaus Schwab's mother is a Rothschild. So they are tied to one of the largest, most powerful families on the planet who own a ton of land, a ton of corporations, and have a ton of connections. And most importantly, control a lot of the central banks around the world and financial institutions. It's a long road to go before this is over, but we're getting there. At least American corporations will start walking this back. At the same time, Japan is diving headlong into full retard territory. Sad. But hey, soon American gaming will be one of the best in the world, and the rest of the world will have to join our standard in order to compete. Hopefully. That's all there is to say about this. Hit that like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.